Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing in this week's show is Title Theme from the game Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and that was composed by Koji Kondo. If listening to that track right away had you thinking, hey, hasn't he started the show with that track before? Well, you're absolutely right about that. And for this week's show, I had this pretty cool idea of revisiting the very first episode of a VGM Journey and give those set of songs the attention that they really deserve. To be honest, the first few episodes of the show, they're a bit rough around the edges. And for whatever reason, I had no commentary for any of the tracks. I stupidly just threw some songs together and called it a show. So I wanted to change that and actually talk about these tracks. And we might as well keep this train rolling with this next track, which is the main theme from Incredible Crash Dummies. And this was composed by Tim and Geoff Follin. That track that you just heard, that was the main theme from Incredible Crash Dummies, and that was composed by Tim and Geoff Follin. Of course, I had to have a Follin Brothers track on the very first episode of the show. I mean, when it came to 8-bit and 16-bit music, I mean, they were the best of the best, I would say. And I'm not entirely sure why specifically Incredible Crash Dummies. I think I might have went with it because it was a lesser known soundtrack of theirs. So, I mean, when you think of the Fallen Brothers, you probably think of Silver Surfer, Plock, Pictionary, maybe Time Tracks. even though I think Pictionary and Time Tracks was just Tim Follin, not Geoff. But just like their other catalog of music, I think Incredible Crash Dummies has a really good soundtrack, especially this track. And I think what's pretty interesting about the track itself is that the A section only plays once, and then it goes into this B section, and it just loops the B section. It never plays the A section again. Though I'm sure that some people probably didn't notice it because the track itself, it's a bit repetitive, but I don't mind it. I think it's a little catchy. And speaking of repetitive, this next track, I know you guys have definitely heard on the show at least 5 times in some capacity. 'Cause it has the honor of being the track that's been played on the show the very most. Whether or not it was a retrospective episode or I played a remix of it. And the track that I'm talking about is Soak Patrol Alpha from Mighty Switch Force 2. Of course, the track that I've played the most on the show, I played it on the very first episode. And this track was composed by Jake Kaufman. That track that you just heard, that was Soak Patrol Alpha from the game Mighty Switch Force 2, and it was composed by Jake Kaufman. I love this song. I really love this song. I think it's got a real nice energy to it. I think it's catchy. It makes me want to dance. And it also makes me really appreciate how good of a composer Jake Kaufman is. But I will admit that this song can be a little polarizing. And I only say that because 80% of the track is really good. But I've heard people complain about that dubstep section, which I will admit is probably the weakest part of the song, but I don't mind it. It's not bad. I think it gives the song a little bit of a variety, and it also could have been a lot worse too. I think when I was making the episode, like just putting the songs together, I think I wanted something a bit modern because the rest of the episode was more retro. And my big aim for the show was to not really set on a specific era or only play 8-bit and 16-bit music or just only play Nintendo music. I wanted to play all kinds of different VGM. And I believe at the time, I think that's why I went with this track for that show, just to have some nice variety and also in a way let people know that this is not going to be just a retro oriented show. We're going to play modern stuff too, and we're going to play a lot of really good modern music. So I know it gets a bit of a bad rep for sounding boring or uninspired or whatever criticism that people like to throw at modern video game music. I think there's a lot of really good and underrated stuff out there. And I think for underrated video game music, I think that will apply to this next track. And this is coming from Spyro the Dragon. The track is Ice Cavern, and this was composed by Stewart Copeland. That track that you just heard, that was Ice Cavern from the game Spyro the Dragon, and this was composed by Stewart Copeland. When Level 1 was coming out, which this was November of 2019, I dated my fiance Carly for less than a year at that point. And I added this track into the show because she absolutely loves Spyro the Dragon. And I thought it would be cool to add a track from one of her favorite games ever. And at the time, I don't think I really appreciated the music for that game all that much. Like, I thought it was okay. And to be honest, I didn't even really care for Spyro all that much at that time, too. But eventually, I would delve deeper into the soundtrack and also the sequels soundtracks, and even had her on the show to talk about the original PlayStation 1 trilogy of Spyro the Dragon. And heck, I even played and 100%ed the first game and really enjoyed it. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this show is a VGM journey. I want to take you guys on a journey, but I'm also taking myself on this journey too, and listening to stuff that I hadn't listened to before or I should have got into. And when I look back at all the tracks that have been played on this show, I mean, there was so much stuff that I wasn't really all that familiar with at the time. And I think my overall appreciation for video game music, I think has only grown as the show has went on. I mean, I really loved it when I started it, and it's just on a whole new level now. And this Ice Cavern track, I think it's really chill. And I'm glad that I was able to play that on the show and also playing it on the show right now. I think it's such an underrated track. And I would say that in that original episode, it was probably the most underrated track of that whole list. We're going to move on to another track that I think was really cool. And this is Stage 1-2 from Rocket Knight Adventures. And quite a handful of composers worked on the soundtrack. I'm not even sure who specifically composed this track, but the soundtrack was credited to Masanori Oouchi, Hata, Michiru Yamane, Hiroshi Kobayashi, and Masanori Adachi. That track that you just heard, that was Stage 1-2 from the game Rocket Knight Adventures, and it was possibly composed by either Masanori Oouchi, Hata, Michiru Yamane, Hiroshi Kobayashi, or Masanori Adachi. And that's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcasting service that you can think of, I'm more than likely going to be on there. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com. Or you could also check us out on Twitter at VGM Journey. We have a Discord server for the show, which I will provide a link for that in the show notes, where you can hang out with your fellow VGM journeymen and talk about games, music, and even look at some cool art. And if you remembered correctly, level 1 only had 5 tracks on it, and that a normal VGM Journey episode has 6. So I'm actually adding a special bonus track of sorts that wasn't originally played on that first episode. So I'm going to play things out with ending theme slash staff credits from the game Metroid Samus Returns. And this was originally composed by Ryoji Yoshitomi, and this arrangement was done by Daisuke Matsuoka. Have a good week, everyone.